Hey, Megan. Hello
Hey,
from Wisconsin. How are
hey,
you?
Steffi.
How
How
are
are
you?
you?
We're doing good. It's reasonably nice out. Not really. It's damp, kind of rainy, foggy, like
Oh,
hovering at like 33 degrees,
oh,
35, wet, chilly. Hey, it's better than 0 degrees and snowy, which I'm
ex
sure will come our way soon enough.
yep,
So,
yep.
how is Callie? How are the horses, the fire situation? We should mention that our guest is coming in shortly here. I see her coming in. So,
Woohoo!
yeah, let's go ahead. Hi, Suzanne. We're going to add you in here. There she is.
Hey,
Hello.
Suzanne.
Hello.
How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm good.
Glad you made it.
Good to see you guys.
It's
I'm
great.
Stephanie.
Yeah.
I met you a long, long time ago at the USDF instructor certification workshops, like
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's
many,
been like over a decade, I think.
many moons ago.
Ah, that
Feels
was
like
that was
another life.
a lot of organization, but honestly, I loved it. I loved it. I loved what it brought into the instructors in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Megan is a certified instructor through fourth. I think she would get through FEI, but I don't think we've had any testing available in the area. So maybe we'll get there someday.
I put in my
Yeah.
application, so we'll see. I might have to host a workshop. Bummer.
Darn.
And
That's exciting.
maybe you can organize it.
It'll have
And
been a while. I might have to dust the cobwebs off of remembering all that stuff. But yeah, we've done that
yeah.
before.
And
So we should introduce Suzanne.
yes, I'm ready. But
Woo.
have we ever met in person? Or
Well, I think we were in that mock testing together
oh, we did.
way back when you were, I think the first time around when you were doing like for training through second or something.
Okay.
That was forever.
So
Long
that was,
time ago.
I did all of that, and then we never had a testing by us because that was when EHV was all over the place, you know, and then I went the Mary Wanless route, so I never did the USDF. Yeah.
Yay! Well, let me introduce you to our subscribers. So, Suzanne Galdun, I pronounced
Yep.
it correctly.
Yep.
Thank you. Is a certified rider, biomechanics instructor. Is it one of 12 or one of 9?
It's 12 now. We just had a few more get certified, so that's exciting.
That is awesome. By Mary Wanless in Ride with Your Mind method. And you are a former certified PATH instructor, correct?
Yes, so that was when I did it. It was NARA, North American Riding for the Handicapped, and now it is PATH, which is something else. I can't remember what the acronym stands for. Something therapeutic horsemanship, right?
No pressure, no pressure. And you're also a certified barefoot trimmer.
Yeah.
And have I missed? And you ran your own riding facility.
It wasn't my facility, but I basically ran the lesson program at that farm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you taught lessons. Have I missed anything?
I don't know. We'll see if it comes up.
Yeah, because today we wanted to talk about your story. Like, how'd you fall in love with horses? Where did it all begin?
I got to start riding when I was 9. There was a barn like 5 minutes from our house, and we never knew it was there. So the funny story is my dad was playing golf with another guy who had a daughter my age. And he was like, well, my daughter rides horses right by your house. And that was that, right? Now it's many, many years later. Here we are.
And you went to school. Did you stay riding through high school, through college? Did you
I did
a
ride
job?
through, I did more, honestly, probably the most of my dressage showing when I was in high school, riding other people's horses. I didn't ever have my own horse until after college. And then in college, I actually rode on the hunt seat team because we didn't have, at that time, there were not a lot of intercollegiate dressage teams, and we didn't have one. So I showed hunt seat a little bit. And then after college, that's sort of when I got into left the corporate job to go make a lot less money teaching therapeutic riding. And then, that was kind of like the one thing led to another. And I did get a thoroughbred who never raced after college. And he was the reason I ended up doing the barefoot trimming stuff. And, it's one of those now, if I only knew now what I knew then,
Yes.
maybe we could have prevented some of the soundness issues or rehabbed some of the soundness issues. So, as much as I didn't necessarily get to do what I had sort of hoped and dreamed of with that horse, it really sort of shaped me into kind of the direction that I went with everything, to kind of dig deeper into what's going on instead of just chalk it up to, behavior, or he's not going to be good enough, or, all those kind of excuses that we often make in our horses of like, this is the why, and I'm going to just move on. So, yes, Stephanie.
Can we just so that people get a more rounded background, can we talk a little bit more about the barefoot farrier experience? Because you have such an interesting background. I don't want to gloss over that, because I've had several horses with major issues with their feet and stuff, and I've had the orthodontic horses and all that. So I mean, if we could, we don't have to spend an hour on it, but we'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so that horse, when I got him, he flexed fine. Everything was great. His x-rays were a little questionable, but I was like, I love him. I want him anyway. And, we started just traditional shoeing, and really he had some navicular changes. His heels were quite low. And I really think he most likely had NPA, that negative palmar angle, but we didn't necessarily call it that 25 years ago.
Right.
They just said he had underrun heels and you should put wedge shoes on him. So he had strained deep digital flexor tendons. This is the eventual process of what led me to that, in 3 out of 4 legs. And entirely related, I think, to the way he was set up in his feet. And so the solution at the time was, we did stall rest, we did wraps, we did all the things, and putting an aluminum shoe that the actual shoe was wedged. And I just knew in my heart, I was like, this is not the way for this horse. Like, this is not fixing the problem. This is just like a crutch. And so I ended up attending a 2-day sort of basic hoof trimming course. This was with a woman named Martha Olivo, and so we did dissections, which I thought were amazing. It was so cool to like peel the layers off. Like, she doesn't do the dissection like some collegiate classes do. You don't slice the hoof down the middle. You are literally like peeling the hoof all off, peeling the sole off, peeling the skin off. Wow. I may still have a cadaver hoof in my freezer, so someday maybe we have to do a dissection together.
Yes. Include me.
Yeah, totally.
Know.
Right.
Oh, cool.
So that was amazing. And then I knew right away that I wanted to follow up on that. So I did her like longer course, which I think was like 5 days of intense like cadaver work and trimming horses and, kind of Q&A and a lot of information. And so then I started trimming my horse. So I had another barefoot trimmer who was working with him first, and then I started to do it, and she would come every couple of trims to just kind of check on me. And I started picking up clients kind of through word of mouth, people who I knew that I was actually teaching them lessons, or I was teaching lessons at the barn where they were boarding. So for a while I did have probably 20 or so horses on my calendar, and drove around a lot. And then in probably, I think I want to say it was 2004, 2005-ish, I herniated discs in my back. And so I kind of cut the trimming out of my life pretty hard and fast at that moment. But the education I had and the experiences I had of working with different horses' feet getting rid of toe cracks, getting rid of quarter cracks over a couple of trims. It was so rewarding. And so definitely, I made mistakes too, and tried to make horses fit the mold too much at that time. And it, made them sore. And I had regrets about choices I made. And, we all do that as we learn. But then since then, I would kind of catch trim a horse when somebody new came into a barn and their horse was really long, or we needed to fix something between trims. So I still do have all my tools, and I still kind of catch a horse here and there. I don't even trim my own horse right now because having that on my calendar would just be like too much. But like today, I just happened to be like, oh, look, you popped a little bit of that bar up, and I'm going to just trim that right off and fix the frog while I'm at it. So it's nice to have that understanding too when I see horses at clinics that you're like, there's a layer of this, that what you're experiencing in the saddle could be related to the way your horse is set up in his trim.
It's so valuable. So
yeah.
I attended a farrier clinic, and I had never done that before, and got to trim my own foot, which I think is actually more difficult with the cadaver foot, holding it and trying. I had never mapped out a foot, and I was surrounded. This was 4 farriers, so I'm the only one. Like, they're done in 20 minutes, and I'm like 45 minutes still going, how do you use the file? It just gives you a whole new respect. And then they did cut the foot in half. So I'm like, please keep me on your list for peeling. That would be so amazing to see what goes on inside the horse's body. How
it's
are we
so
affecting
incredible
them?
when you peel the hoof wall off and you see the lamina. You're like, oh, that's laminitis right there, when that happens. So yeah, I will have to put that on a nice weather time of year calendar so we can be outside, because it doesn't smell great.
Happy to host if whatever to help make it happen.
Awesome.
Because I think there's just so much knowledge, because I've also wanted to always take an anatomy class on horses,
me too.
but I'm so fixated on what's going on the outside and what's on top, but you need to know all these other sides. And so that's just great that you have that knowledge and can help people in your clinics.
It's really valuable. Yeah, for sure.
Very unique. And so why in the world did you leave your corporate job?
Well, I mean, literally, like, I can tell you, it was a small business. It wasn't like a humongous company, but it was like, I could not sit at a desk. Like, it was horrible. Like, there were days when I would be really feeling like I was, doing good for the company and like making sales, and it was kind of like a little bit of everything because it was a small business. But I was just like losing my mind. I mean, like, I understand what going postal means, because I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. And full disclosure, like, I was working for my dad's company. So let me tell you how difficult it is to tell your dad you're going to quit working for him. That was a challenge. And but then again, like, full circle, it all came back that later on, when his office manager had to have heart surgery, I was able to step in part-time and like do some of the stuff that she did. So he didn't have to like hire a temp. I was the temp. And and it all ended up working out, but it was definitely a significant pay cut, which I took like just a few months after getting married. So thankfully my husband has hung on through all that.
You did the bait and switch, huh?
Yeah. I was like, I love you. Now I'm going to go work with horses full time. Thanks.
Now, how long did it take for you to make this decision? I mean, because I think that's helpful for our subscribers. Like, this is your dad, and whether it was your dad or not, like how did you come to that conclusion? Like, I'm going postal, and how long did it take you to make that decision? And do you have any regrets?
No regrets, that's for sure. And I think it was really, for me, a number crunching thing. It was like, okay, we're getting married and we're going to be having multiple incomes, and how here's our kind of expense of, we're going to have, we had already bought a house, and here's our mortgage payment, and here's what we need to cover. And my husband got a different job, and so it was kind of like, okay, rationalize this with me, and I think we can make this work. And then, even though I was working like 40 hours a week at the therapeutic riding facility, I still, of course, like, took a few lessons over at this barn and took a few lessons over at that barn, and was a little bit working my brains out.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was definitely at that point going to sometimes like 4 or 5 barns a week.
Wow.
So 4 of them in addition to the 40 hours I was doing, and some of the therapeutic riding hours were barn care. So it was kind of awesome to be the first one in there in the morning, and
Mm-hmm.
feeding in the morning is kind of a nice thing when all the horses are really happy that you're there and want to see you come in.
That's my favorite time.
Yeah,
Is the morning, no one's there, and I get to feed them.
yeah.
That's my favorite time. And you went from the corporate job to the therapeutic instructor, correct?
Yes. So then after working with them for I don't know whether it was like 9 months or a year, then I did the certification program for that. And I really thought at that time that like therapeutic riding was going to be my career path. I really did love that. I felt like I was making a difference in the riders specifically, but also, I stepped into that facility and kind of said, "Hey guys, maybe we shouldn't just throw any saddle on any horse." I mean, they at the time were kind of just like, the saddles had numbers, and they were more putting saddles on horses related to the rider. And while of course fitting the rider is really important, a lot of therapeutic riding horses are older. They're being donated as a second career or a retirement career, and so their top lines are not always great. And so making sure the saddle fits, to me, it was like a hugely important thing. And I'm not a trained saddle fitter, but just the understanding of, wither clearance and proper pads and girths. And some horses were in Western and some horses were in English. And, for some horses, like, there was not going to be a Western saddle that was going to fit that horse.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a little bit of a journey of kind of helping to educate some of the other staff, because there's a lot of people in that industry who have huge hearts for it, but don't have a lot of equestrian education.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of, I was able to bring a little bit of what I knew already from my horsing background to them. And then now it's crazy. At one point I went with that group to their national convention. And I was like, someday I'm going to speak at the National Convention for Therapeutic Riding. And in a couple of weeks, I'm actually speaking at the regional convention. So I've done a few clinics for Mainstay Therapeutic Riding up in Richmond, Illinois, teaching their instructors how to use biomechanics as a lens to help their riders, but also to help the riders balance better so that the horses can have more longevity in that career, because a lot of those horses burn out pretty fast. So when you've got riders who are so challenged physically, or maybe cognitively don't understand why they should sit a certain way, or don't necessarily understand your directions, helping give those instructors some tools to look at how they're also tacking those horses, like what tack is appropriate for what horse, for what rider. But then again, how to help the volunteers, like the sidewalkers and the leaders, have cues to help riders get back into a position that's more correct for the horse to carry them. So really keeping them centered, thinking about seat bones and weight on seat bones, just like I would for a dressage lesson.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So maybe I will still be at the national convention there someday.
You will. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, why not? I think that's incredible. And I never even thought about saddle fit for therapeutic horses like that. Like I have a school horse program, and they all have their own saddles. that fits the horse and not the rider. I mean, hopefully it fits the rider, but I mean,
Right.
there's so many people coming in that sometimes it doesn't fit the rider. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's just a part of a school horse program. So I actually never thought about that side, because a lot of therapeutic riding centers, it's donations, correct?
Right.
And limited funding, and you do the best you can by your horses and your people.
Right.
I totally understand that. And so, how long were you in the therapeutic riding center in that program?
Probably 3 or 4 years. And then I actually worked at a couple of other centers also. So there's a center now in Northern Illinois called Bravehearts, which has gotten very big. And I was actually their first instructor. So when they wanted to start that program, it was people who had volunteered at the one I was at previously. And they asked me if I would be willing to start that. And I did have to kind of, I think it was really round about the same time when I herniated the discs that I had to kind of back away, because there's so much kind of like lifting and supporting of riders in the mounting and dismounting process. And so that's kind of the same time when I started to have to wean myself away from that, and then focus a little more on the dressage and sort of basics, of English riding.
Mm-hmm. And why that path, right? Like, why does that affect you in a positive way?
Well, for me, I think the lens of like looking at challenged bodies for so long really made me want to help those disabled riders. But then I would look at the able-bodied everyday sort of rider and go, well, you have this, asymmetry in your body, or, how could I get you to sit in a better way? And when I think this is still, I just got back from a clinic last night, and it was like to see some of these riders who it was a new location. I'd never met any of these people before, how like the small little tweaks that to a rider in an adaptive riding, therapeutic riding situation, like can really be, a pain relief issue or a safety issue. In the dressage community, it's like, oh, well, all of a sudden the horse goes, oh, is this how I go on the bit? And the riders realize how it's not from the hands, and it really is from their body. But until they know how to put their body in the right place, just to see like horses and riders improving their relationship, it's just like, it fills me up every day. Like I can't get enough.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It's like training a horse. And
Yeah.
And if you're teaching people, you want to better that horse, and it's like this light bulb, and you're like, like some of my students, they put the horse on the bit for the first time, or they're like, they don't really believe they're on the lunge line, and I'm like, literally step into that stirrup, and they're like, the horse turns, it's amazing.
Yes.
It really, I think sometimes just having those lessons, for me anyway, because I'm always thinking of Grand Prix, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it brings you joy. You're like, oh yeah,
Yes.
it can be so easy. Why do we get so in our head, with the pulling? And I'm like, wow, it's just the lightest little thing, and it really is amazing.
It says on the back of my business card that I strive to facilitate joy in the horse and rider relationship.
Yes.
That's what we're here for. Like, it's supposed to be fun, guys.
Say it again for the people in the back. It has to be fun. I'm so with you. And every aspect of it. Even when our horse is not doing what we want them to do, it's fun. You're like, oh my gosh, ow, he's getting it. Oh, he didn't get it. Oops, bummer. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, totally.
So now you decide to leave the therapeutic riding center. Why?
Mm-hmm. There was really not, at that location at the time, like there was not an opportunity for advancement. So I was kind of like, second in command, but the person ahead of me wasn't going anywhere. And it was really not enough money. I mean, it was like sort of not sustainable. And having started teaching at other barns again, kind of as a freelance instructor, I was able to expand that. And, you know, you hate to say that it's like about making more money, but at the time it was like, I gotta pay my mortgage, you know,
You have to
and
eat.
$9.50 an hour was
Yeah.
not gonna do it.
No.
So so yeah, I mean, again, at that point, like I was still driving. I mean, I put so many miles on so many cars in my life. It's crazy, but um going to a lot of different farms, and you know, I might do half a day at one barn and then drive somewhere else and do, you know, the evening over there. And it just, there were, you know, it sort of grew. Then I ended up being sort of based out of one barn where I taught the most, which was only like 20 minutes from my house. So
Oh,
when I
great.
had when I had kids, you know, I was able to really focus on teaching there and not having to be gone so much when the kids were little. So so that really was a helpful thing, that I could still stay very active. And you know, like a lot of us horse crazy ladies, I took about 3 weeks off after babies, and I was like back in it, you know, as full time as I could be. And you know, then that program, I mean, I was teaching there, that lesson program, for like 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's also the time that you were raising your children.
Yeah, my
Right?
son's going to be 18 in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And
Wow.
my daughter's 16, so it's kind of crazy.
I think it's crazy you've done all these things. I'm exhausted. And you're still married, right?
Yes, yes, we are.
And your children love you. I mean, I don't have children, and I do a lot like us crazy horse people, but I don't know. I admire you. How do you raise children and have a business, you know, like wow, and a relationship with your spouse? It's a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely hard because I mean, I've missed things, you know.
Mhm.
Um and now, like with the amount of traveling I do, sometimes it's like, oh, now my daughter just got cast in a play.
Ooh.
And now that play is a weekend that I am supposed to be away. So creatively, and a lot of the clinics that I teach are repeat people, so I know them and I can say, hey, can we shift? Can we get creative with timing? So that particular conflict coming up, instead of flying into Michigan like I often do, I'm going to go to the play Friday night, drive halfway, Saturday morning, drive the rest of the way. The clinic's going to start at 10 instead of 8, and then Sunday's good. And then, you know, on the way home, I've actually managed to add an extra day on my track home, so that it you know, it's going to work out. And I think I really just always have faith that that is going to um, be something that supports me. And I actually, speaking of having faith, like I also have worked for churches as well
Mhm.
throughout this time.
Mhm.
So I've been a singer, a music director in churches. And so that has
Oh
often
my
been
God.
a supplemental income. Again, sometimes I really can't tell you how I did all the things I did all at the same time, because it was chaos. And even now, my husband sometimes is like, "Where are you going?" And like he asked me, he picked me up last night. He's like, "So where were you?" I was in Arizona. It was nice and warm and sunny. It was great.
And let's take a step back before we go and talk about clinics. What did it take to become certified for PATH, or I don't remember what you called it. It was
Nara.
NARA. Yes. So what did
At
that
that
take?
time, we had we didn't have to do it in person. So we had to send in videos of us teaching a lesson
Mm-hmm.
with, I believe it was like 20 some years ago, so I may be wrong, but I believe we had to have one student that was cognitively impaired and one student that was physically impaired. And they're also looking at how you're managing the volunteers. Are you keeping track of what the leaders and sidewalkers are doing? And then we had to send in a riding video as well. So you do have to be at least sort of mildly proficient. I mean, it was training level dressage type work at most.
Mm-hmm.
You know, walk, trot, canter both ways, halted and rein back.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I believe they do, it may have changed now since COVID, but I know that at one point they were doing for PATH now in-person certifications only. But that may have gone back now that we're back in the land of doing things virtually. But yes, I sent a VHS tape through the mail.
Yeah.
I still have it too, just for posterity to be like,
Yeah,
oh my God, look at my writing,
I think that's awesome. I used to have video day for my clients when I started teaching 25 years ago. And the thing I found most with my students is they lack confidence in themselves. So I put on this video, and this rider was flopping all around. The toes were up, the toes were down. The heels must have been 3 inches in the air, and like crooked head tilt. And they were laughing at her and laughing away. And they said, "Who is that?" And I said, "That's me." That's where I started from. Looks like hell, but look at what you can do.
Yeah. We have a question.
Yay.
So the question is, I don't know if everybody can see it or not, but how do you train a legally blind person? And I'll tell you, I haven't done a ton of work with blind riders. I did work with 1 or 2, and there's often a lot of using sound, but even in my general work with able-bodied riders, I use a lot of hands-on resistance to shape the rider to help them understand like where the rider would be. So in terms of helping a visually impaired rider understand how their body should be in the saddle, I would literally be putting my hands on that rider with their permission and shaping their leg or aligning their torso. And then as they potentially progress to independent riding, like off of a lunge line or without a leader's help, you actually can use sound cues, and you can compete in dressage, in para dressage, with letter callers. So there would be people standing outside of the arena, saying F, 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 F. So they're the person standing at letter F. So it really is amazing. So to that person who asked that question, there is definitely opportunity for that within the world of para dressage for sure.
I'm a huge supporter of para dressage, and I'll tell you the reason why is Megan knows this lady as well. We had a horse person who was here in Wisconsin for many years, Alex. You may know of Alex. Anyway, she has been associated with the United States para dressage team for a long time. And so following her journey decades ago, it really sucked me in. And these are some of the most incredible riders I've ever seen. People, like you said, who are visually impaired, people who have no legs and no arms, and they're steering the horse with their teeth. It's phenomenally, it's so inspiring. It's amazing, amazing to see how incredible they are. So
I got to teach a gal in Virginia a couple of years ago who has MS, and so really like has very little. If I at this point, I mean, she uses a scooter to mobilize around. She drives and everything, but in the saddle, like she doesn't have any control of her legs or really any use of her legs. And she was like, just teach me like a normal person. I can think about my body parts. I can't always mobilize them. And we had a great clinic. And then she ended up just like 2 weeks later going to the para nationals, and like I think she won all of her classes. It was like so exciting.
That is amazing. Yeah. Any more questions from our viewers?
Not at the moment. I know, and I'm not going to name the person, but I know one of our people who's viewing has said many times she has MS. And so, it's good, to hear these things and to talk about how, you are helping able-bodied riders, but you, for years and years and years, got started with those who, like you said, either physically or cognitively having issues and stuff. So that's so helpful. And do you feel it makes you, with that history, like more intuitive?
I do, because I think in that realm, you so often have to be sort of if you've got a rider who cannot express verbally what is going on, you have to be creative with your communication, but also seeing what's happening in the body. I talk all the time in my clinics about mirror neurons, which is like, here's a sciencey segue, but horses, we have mirror neurons as humans. It's like when I see your face and you have a sad face on, I go, what's wrong? Like, and babies do that. That's why you smile at a baby and a baby smiles at you. And there is a study somewhere that said horses probably have a minimum of 60,000 times more mirror neurons than humans. So I talk a lot about how horses really do know what our bodies are doing, even if we are not that aware of what our bodies are doing. But I used to kind of say, I was like, well, maybe I just tuned into my mirror neurons in a way, working with riders like that. Maybe I have more mirror neurons than the average person. One of my friends was like, maybe you're just really good at noticing patterns. And that could be it too, right? That I can see, I feel like I can see in a rider's body what, like Megan, you can probably look at a horse and go like, oh, I see where this horse is restricted. And for me, my eye always goes directly to the rider. I might see this horse is a little shorter behind one leg than the other. And I look at, what the rider's doing versus what's happening in the horse, so that hopefully we can, get to that place where all things are in balance and working together as they should.
I think that's cool because I do study the horse, and the way I study the horse, I know exactly what the rider is doing. And obviously in my school horse program, I know the horses for years. And I think that is amazing that you go right to, obviously I'm very much on rider position, but the horse actually helps me instruct.
Yes.
It's not me. It's
right.
What my horse is telling me. And then I try to help the rider, but how cool that you go right to the rider and see how it's affecting the horse. I think that is the coolest thing. Ooh, we have another question. What do you do when a rider can't reach the stirrups because they're too short?
Shorten the stirrups, punch holes. We have done creative things with riders where we literally, because you couldn't necessarily get stirrup leathers that were short enough, we bought like extra large leather dog collars to be able to hang the stirrups that much shorter for, sometimes that was for like a small child. But I think you can always get creative with tack and things like that. Funny story, when I was riding in college, it was like the intercollegiate stuff where you draw a name and you have to ride whatever horse they assign you. And sometimes there are height limits or weight limits on some of the smaller pony, large pony type horses. And I drew a horse at one show that was, probably 15 hands, like not too small for me, but the stirrups, I'm 6'1", like the stirrups were way too short, like insanely too short. And, I didn't know that we could ask, like my coach was there and he's like, we knew before I got on that the leathers were going to be too short. And they were like, no, you have to ride with the tack that's provided. This is the horse's tack. And we didn't come to the show with an extra pair of, stirrups and leathers. Like, I know now that you can do that. Because I was just talking to a girl this weekend who shows a lot of IEA in high school. And she was like, oh yeah, I have a friend who brings her own leathers and stirrups and they ask if they can put them on the tack. But it was one of the most atrocious flat rounds of my life because I was like, I cannot sit. I had to ride the whole ride in half seat. I did not pin in the class. That was the end of that.
That's awesome. It's not, but it is.
Right. It was like, I'm just going to stand up here and 2-point, guys, because I cannot possibly. It was like jockey style. It was ridiculousness.
That is a great story. I love it.
But I would honestly say, even as a dressage instructor, I would always err on the stirrups being too short rather than being too long.
Yep. And why?
I feel it.
Yeah. Right.
I'm tall.
Yeah, right. I don't know what your thoughts are, but maybe we could eradicate external giant thigh blocks from the face of the planet. That's another story. But the why of that, I think, really is, from my perspective, I want a rider to be able to use their quads and not have all the weight down in the back of the hamstring and the bum and down in the heels. And so typically if the stirrups are too long, you've either got that situation like you were saying, Megan, where you've got a rider on their toes with their heels up. And then as they draw their heel up, they're really tightening that back line from the calf to the hamstring to the bum, which will in turn affect their seat bones, which will in turn make it atrocious to sit the trot and canter. So having a little bit shorter stirrup often helps give the rider some more support in those angles at the knee joint. So we can get them more in the front line of the body and use their quads to help support the weight of the torso in the saddle.
Ooh.
Yes,
Ooh,
Stephanie.
yes.
I have questions.
Yes,
Ooh,
I have answers, I hope.
You just made me think of, so I'm really curious a lot about tack. So I'll try not to like totally divert our thoughts, but on the stirrup thing, so there's now all these jointed stirrups, flexi stirrups, rotating stirrups, flexing. What are your thoughts on, are they gimmicky or are they a wonderful thing, or is it somewhere in the middle?
I think it depends on the thing. I will tell you, I don't really love the ones that rotate at the top. I just, somebody who this weekend I shortened her stirrups, and she had the rotated ones on, and I like shortened them and clicked them back to normal. And there are some reasons why it could be good in terms of how the rider's leg hangs. I personally think those stirrup leathers that they say, this stirrup leather is going to like lay under your leg better so you have a quieter leg. Baloney, guys. Yep. Like, do not fall for the $250 stirrup leathers. They will not change your riding position. I'm sorry. I personally do like a slightly jointed, like the ones that have like the joint on the side that kind of moves a little bit. And that is because I've dealt with a lot of foot pain in my life. Thankfully, I don't have that anymore as an issue. I could spend another talk on that. But that took some of the pressure off the bottom of my foot where I would have all this pain. I think for riders with knee and ankle issues, that can be really helpful too. Because I have definitely ridden in other stirrups that hurt me, like I cannot stand personally those like cheese grater type ones that have the metal tread. I can feel that through my boots.
Yeah.
The ones from 40 years ago before they put the pads in them.
They're now.
Right, but there are new ones now that people have because it gives them more grip. And I'm like, people, come and have a lesson and I will fix your legs so you don't need to actually have grip on the tread of your stirrup.
And can we talk about knee rolls and why, or thigh blocks on why you don't like them?
So they're not all terrible, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the time I see a thigh block that is not shaped properly for the rider. So that a lot of the time you've got a thigh block that is, 2 inches from the front of the panel. So you've got the front of the panel of the saddle here, and then there's a gap, and then there's this monstrous thigh block. And now you've lost 6 inches of flap where the rider's thigh cannot be. So then the femur of the rider gets sort of like shoved back and their bum is landing too far back on the seat of the saddle, which is landing too far in the hollow of the horse's back. And it's sort of like a recipe for disaster. You're putting pressure in the wrong place. The rider has a really hard time getting to a neutral pelvis. And, sometimes the thigh block is like literally forcing the rider into external rotation of the femur, which is exactly what I don't want them to have. So, I can't say that any of them are inherently terrible, like brand wise or anything, because I think it all depends on how it's fit. But it really does reflect what, a good saddle fitter is going to tell you is that the fit for the rider is just as important, because if that particular saddle is putting the rider in a place that makes it detrimental to the horse, it doesn't matter how well it fits the horse. And a lot of those old Passier types that kind of were just like these flat old saddles that had nothing on them are really so good for riders to learn on and experience, because they have to learn to control their leg but also have the freedom to experiment. Like, what if I want to put my leg a little forward or a little back, or now this horse has a different barrel shape, where does my leg go? So that's part of it too, in terms of like the length of the rider's femur and the shape the roundness or narrowness of the horse's barrel. Because again, if you get, you don't want somebody to feel like they're that kid on the Thelwell pony in the cartoons with their legs like, sticking out sideways. Hard to get your leg on when your, knee roll is shoving your foot at a 45-degree angle away from the horse.
Yeah. I've been in a saddle that like locked me down. I couldn't follow the horse's motion. I was I'm like, I was in quicksand, and then I was fighting the saddle. So there's no way. My poor little horse was like moving like a quarter horse. Like, It's like, what? Go ahead, Steph.
So on that topic of saddles and tack, you kind of touched briefly on it. I'm going to take us back there to, like you said, the old posses. You've been in the industry. Megan and I, we've all been in the industry long enough. We'll just say several decades. We have seen a lot of changes in saddle design. One thing I remember, I'll bring Megan back to this. Megan, when you and I met at the University of Wisconsin, the clinic, downtown Madison, when you were a kid, and I was calm down. I was just barely out of being a child. I actually borrowed a horse for that clinic. And the saddle that was for the horse fit the horse nicely, did not fit me. And it put me, it's like the stirrup bar placement was so far forward. I kind of felt like I was in a saddle. Yeah. So it's sad. I still feel like we see that, even though saddle fitters are so far beyond that. But so how much of that do you feel is it's just the wrong saddle for the wrong person? And how much of that do you think you're seeing that it's just like these saddle designers should be ashamed of themselves? Or is it
I think it's definitely some of both, because there are definitely certain saddle designs out there that I would not have a client of mine purchase. And there are still other, sometimes that's because if the stirrup bar is so far forward, like you're in a chair seat, because the saddle is built in a chair seat. I remember a client who I taught very occasionally. She rode with somebody else at my barn, and she got a new saddle, and she was like, "Oh, I love it so much. It's so comfortable." And I saw her ride, and I was like,
nope,
because now you're sitting in a chair. So good on. It's comfortable. I'm sure it's comfortable. Don't know that it's sustainable for your horse's back, but I do also have one client who the fitter that she uses has, like, she hand sews the knee rolls on in person when you try the saddle, and those are some of the best fitted 2-horse and rider saddles I've ever seen. And I see the question about, have I tried an Australian saddle? I've ridden in one. And they have different things, like they have what they call pulleys on the top. They're like a little bit of a kind of hybrid, almost like a thigh block sort of Western pommel. And those, I think, honestly, in many ways are fine, because they're not in the way of the rider's femur. I don't have a ton of experience with them, but the ones I've seen on horses have been really decent for the rider.
Trying to find my camera. So how often do you go to a farm at the request of like a student or something to meet with the saddle fitter and your student to kind of have, like, do you get invited to things like that where you're kind of diagnosing?
Yeah, I don't do it a lot because right now, I don't have a ton of like regular local people. Like, I'm clinicking so much, I don't have that. But I did definitely do that when I was working at the barn where I was for so long in the lesson program, that when clients would buy a horse, I made sure to be a part of that conversation, because there are brands of saddles where the fitters are not very educated. And that's, I think, an unfortunate, if you're a sales rep or a fitter. And I had one person who I saw was using a fitter. She was at the barn where I was, but was a jumper. And so I taught her on occasion just a little kind of position tune-ups. And that particular saddle fitter was like, oh, we have a new dressage saddle and I'm going to show it to you. It's in my car. And I looked at it and I was like, I would never ride in this. I would never have. And I was like, do you have an option without knee rolls? And she was like, no, no, no. And this is the great thing about the panel. I mean, it really felt like she was just like selling me a speech that she had memorized.
Yep.
You know, I'll tell you, to be honest, that particular saddle, when it came for that rider, like it did not fit. And they had to go up a level of management and get someone else from another state to come in. It was really disappointing, you know, that rider had spent like thousands of dollars and this custom saddle shows up and it's like trapping the horse's withers, you know? So,
yeah. Can I divert to another huge can of worms? Can we talk about tall boots and the various stiffnesses and flexibility for, you know, how it holds a rider's leg? Like, can they flex a little in their ankle and how much that might affect their biomechanics? Because I personally can't ride in something that's super stiff. I just can't, because I've been injured a few times by horses and, you know.
And where I like more of a stiffer boot, and when I've been in a soft, because I've like, oh, these are so expensive, I want to try something cheaper. No way. So how does that affect us? That's a great question.
Yeah, really good. I think there is a bit of personal preference in that, of course. But I can tell you, like, having had a lot of foot pain, like when your feet hurt or your ankles hurt in your boots, like you can't not notice it. It is so distracting to me. I don't actually teach in like paddock boots anymore. I have wide toe box, like they're like a boot, but they're not designed for the barn, so that the hours that I spend on my feet are not any longer in a pointed toe, you know, paddock boot type thing. And so I think stiffness in the calf is helpful. So I do think that, like, you know, the paddock boot and half chap life, while it is less expensive, it's not very supportive. And so at a tall boot, even if they're like the sort of softer, less expensive brands, I think a tall boot does offer the rider a little more protection, but B, a little more structure. I use that word so much in my teaching that, like, we want to be able to have structure. But I do also feel that when you have, because I've taught clients when they get a brand new pair of boots and they're literally like, I cannot put my heels down. I cannot bend my ankle. And then there's that question of, well, are you going to break them in off the horse? Are you going to walk around? You know, there's a sense of like dedication, right, to a new pair of boots. So I have tall boots that are, I wouldn't say necessarily super stiff at the ankle. They're reinforced on the outside, so they have a nice soft feel on the inside. But the day I got them, I ended up riding, you know, sitting on like 4 or 5 horses and teaching like 6 or 8 lessons that day, and I wore them all day. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me! Wow. This is unreal. So that was maybe a lucky thing. But it's funny that you bring that up, because I do feel like something I would like to do in the industry someday, because my journey of healing my feet has been really profoundly impactful on my quality of life. I mean, I used to get home from a day of teaching and I would teach 7 or 8 hours, and I literally could not stand up in the shower afterwards because my feet hurt so much. So that's hard to kind of live with. But now I want to see some potential. Sorry, my child is trying to get so they're like ordering me food and he's like, what do you want? I would really like to work with a company where we could actually develop like a rounder, wider toe box, because a pointed toe boot, while it looks the part, right, it's so not healthy, really not healthy. So yes, and yes. So that people will say that a pointed toe is safer to come out of the stirrup. Well, all you need is a stirrup that's slightly wider, right? So the whole point of being able to make sure your foot is safe in the stirrup is making sure that the stirrup is wider than your boot, and that you have freedom to pull your, so your foot's going to come out in the case of emergency, or you get a safety stirrup. That's something else. But I was literally like, would have been on the docket when I went to the podiatrist. They were like, well, we can help you get out of pain. And here's what they said. So my feet kind of looked like this. Like my toes actually, everything was so bent, but the bottoms of my toes actually didn't even touch the ground. There was so much contraction in the top of my foot. They were going to cut all the tendons, break all the bones, and pin everything.
What?
No.
And one foot, it was going to be 6-week recovery, and the other foot, and then 6 weeks. I was like, no, thank you.
So yeah, and Megan is too. We were runners for a number of years, and there are running shoes that have a narrow toe box, and they're like hugely popular brands. And I'm like, why are you people doing this to yourselves? Because you're doing this, your toes start to crumble over. I have to have a wide toe box. And I also I found that a lot of women's, I'm tall like you, Suzanne. I call it 5'12".
Yeah.
I found that a lot of the boots, like off the shelf, off the rack boots, even though there's supposedly different manufacturers and all this, I don't have a wide foot, but for riding boots, apparently I have an extra wide foot, which I don't. I wear a B-sized running shoe. Like that's just considered normal. I wear normal shoes. I have never had to buy wide shoes other than riding boots.
Yep.
So they wanted to squeeze my toes in with a super narrow toe. And then they also were trying to squeeze my foot in to this narrow footbed.
Yeah.
And I mean, very frustrating. And I actually remember many, many conversations with other women of taller stature saying I had to shop the men's boots because nothing worked for me.
My first pair of tall boots was a men's pair of boots.
Yes.
And I still often buy a lot of men's sizes. My recent tall boots are custom, so they're, sized to fit European sizes. But, I wear a European size 43 or bigger, depending on the shoe. So, but somebody asked about foot pain in the chat, and I will tell you that I used a toe spacer called Correct Toes. I do not get any money for telling you this. Like correcttoes.com. People are like, oh, like the ones you get for a pedicure, and it's not the same. They have more structure and more stability. And I just wore them starting like 15 or 20 minutes before I went to bed every night. And I mean, I literally could not walk from my bed to my bathroom, which is all of like 12 feet, without slippers on. And now I can like jog down the stairs barefoot. It is really amazing. I mean, I have I live basically with like zero foot pain now. And honestly, zero back pain most of the time after having herniated discs. So, we talk in riding in the horse world so much about like my horses break over, back to the barefoot trimming. Like this is how my life all runs in circles. And now I talk to people about their breakover when they walk.
Oh, cool.
Because if you don't notice how you walk off the horse, we all spend more time on the ground on our own 2 feet than we spend in the saddle. And so the way you walk off the horse absolutely informs the way you balance your foot in the stirrup, the way your legs hang from your pelvis. It means a lot. So if you have a boot on then that's like cramping the fascia underneath the bottom of your foot, that is connected all the way up the back of your leg to your lower back. And how many riders out there are living with a ton of back pain? And like, I'm living proof you can get out of that pattern. And I just love to be able to help people realize that in their own riding and their own life,
So may I ask another question on the boot topic? We've kind of, rolls back into what we were talking about, people buying like super stiff boots, which maybe isn't good for them. I've had people go, well, just buy stiff boots and put heel wedges in so that you're suddenly wedged up in this space where there's maybe minimal to no flexibility anyway in the ankle of the boot. So now you've got your foot wet, your heel
Yep.
wedged up, your ankle kind of shoved up. Everything's, everybody's like, just buy, super stiff boots, throw some wedges in there, and, la-di-da, everything's going to be great.
Right. And then, okay, what that does is it might take the pressure off the back of your knee because your boot's a half a centimeter too high or something. And it maybe like prevents you from getting a rub at your ankle. But then the boot breaks in incorrectly. So then sometimes people are like, okay, now my boot's broken in. I'm going to take the riser out. And then the ankle crease like rubs on their ankle bone in a bad way. And then, you spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on boots and you try to do all the things to break them in and they don't feel comfortable. And I just think that like it really does affect the whole muscle chain because you can't take that piece of you out of the equation. Even internally. So this is a cool thing that a lot of people don't realize, that there are connections in your body from your tongue. Your tongue is literally connected to the bottom of your feet. So if you, Megan's like, So if you clench your toes, so this is what I teach people, like the roof of your mouth and the jaw is connected to your diaphragm, which is connected to your pelvic floor, which is connected to the arches of your feet. Those are all little like dome shapes. When you get those all in line, that's like the German word Schwerpunkt, like that center point, like that's the rider in their plumb line. But if you clench your toes, guys, you might notice it affects your pelvic floor.
It does.
If you clench your jaw, it's going to affect your diaphragm and you won't be able to breathe as well.
Yep.
And that's going to over time also affect your foot. So like you might be holding your breath and your feet are starting to come out of the stirrups. You might be clenching your toes because you're a little anxious and you start bouncing. So all of these pieces are so connected that, yeah, absolutely. If you have a boot that is not allowing your foot to function in the stirrup how it should, that you can't bend and flex the ankle, that has repercussions in your knees and your hips and your back for sure.
Wow. So we have a really good question here. I'm going to flash on the screen, but I will mirror what she says. For decades of riding young horses, I have the same issue. And I, when I was riding, did as much trips to the chiropractor as I could to try to keep myself in alignment. I was almost 2 centimeters out of alignment. I mean, it was bad. My chiropractor was shocked I could even walk. So, it's going to be for me a lifelong battle. Sue here is saying, she's got uneven hips. So how do you tackle that with students?
There's a lot of ways actually. And I think as long as, well, I'll tell you this, I was going to say, people are like, oh, my one leg is shorter than the other. Not unless it's x-rayed and it's the bones. Right? So the uneven hips is typically actually a soft tissue problem. Yeah. So I will tell you, like the chiropractic work saved my life when I herniated discs, but you have to address the soft tissue also, and then the patterning of how you are moving your body. So a lot of times I end up talking to riders about what is that thigh doing on the low side. So if your hips are unlevel, if I looked at you from the front in the saddle, your knees are going to also be on level. And so I will teach riders to think of, bringing that thigh that's low, trying to bring it back up into the pelvis. Now there is a muscle that does that. It's called pectineus. You can look that up if you're sciencey and anatomically, excited about things. But I teach it like this because I think it makes more sense. The Barbie movie came out a couple years ago, right? So people got back into thinking about Barbie dolls. You can take a Barbie leg and pull it out of the pelvis, right? But you can take a Barbie leg and click it back into the pelvis. So if your pelvis is a bit unlevel like that right now, this leg is sort of unplugged from your pelvis and this one is way jammed up there. And so there are ways in to think about, okay, I can bring this femur back up into my pelvis and potentially let go of adhesions or tensions in the glute and the hamstring to let this one come back down. so that you get back to a place of level. It's kind of like I don't have one in front of me, but if you had a McDonald's straw, you can take it and fold it, and you can move that sort of point in the fold.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening when you have hips unlevel a lot of the time, is that there's actually one side of the body that is kind of the clenchy side, and one side that falls out. So if you think of, for example, a horse that doesn't want to bend well to the left, rider tends to grip and hold with the left calf, which pulls that leg up into the rider's body, and the right leg gets forgotten about and starts to slip out.
Yep.
And you're never going to really get a good bend left because your right leg is sort of in la-la land, and the horse's right long back muscle has no reason to come through to the bridle. So there you go.
Now, do you approach, and it's probably individual depending on the student, but if they are uneven, do you work on them on the horse, or do you do it unmounted? Do you take them off the horse?
I will sometimes take people off the horse. I do feel like most of the time I can be pretty darn effective with them on the horse. I have a lot of exercise ideas. I'm not like in any way an exercise professional. I can refer you to people I know who do that. But I think partly because I had to change my body so much. I believe we can do it. I taught a woman in Michigan last year for the first time who was in her 70s, had mega scoliosis, like her spine looks like a number 4, and rheumatoid arthritis. So her joints have issues. And so her body was very, very like unlevel in the saddle, but she was riding 4th level, like, and doing it. And I had her do some different exercises, and yes, definitely her hips were unlevel too. It was like her hips were unlevel, her rib cage was shifted to the side, and then her shoulders were unlevel. And in kind of being able to kind of separate those pieces and give her feels and words to put to those feels and adjustments, she trotted away from me as square as you would think any normal torso would look on a horse. And I literally turned to the auditors and I was like, I need to just go home now because I don't know how her body was able to do that. And I mean, I came back to that area 6 weeks later, saw her again, and she was as good as she was when I left her. And now I feel like if that woman can change her body that much in the span of 2 lessons, we all have hope, no matter how screwed up we are. I mean, my body. So I've been riding with Mary Wanless for almost 12 years, and she now has admitted that the hollow in my back, she calls it in front of me, the hollow from hell, and says that in all over the world, wherever she goes, she's like, Suzanne's back was one of the most hollow that I've ever seen. And it's not anymore. Like,
Yay.
I do not have a hollow back anymore. I have changed my posture in and out of the saddle, which has massively impacted my riding. And really, I mean, that I learned it to ride better, but it has changed my life for the better. And I think it's a really powerful thing to be able to come in and do that for people. I mean, I have clients I've taught who I forget that they came to me with back pain because it's a non-issue now in the saddle. But people who sometimes, like there was somebody a couple of weekends ago who kind of was like, oh yeah, usually when I get off, I'm really sore in this hip or wherever, I don't remember, or my lower back hurts and then she gets off and she goes, it doesn't hurt. I just got off and it doesn't hurt. So if we can engage the muscles that maybe weren't doing their job so that we can relieve the compensation patterns in the parts of the body that were overcompensating, we can get riders out of pain, which is a huge deal.
It's life-changing. That's amazing. Yeah, that's quality of life. I mean, that's
right.
Amazing.
And absolutely then the fact that it makes you ride better is like a bonus, right?
Well, to be pain-free is magical. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Now, what I find amazing is you are able to do it with certain people in 2 lessons. And is that because the two of you click, her learning style, your teaching style, and she has body awareness and coordination, whereas some people may not. And do you think it may take a couple of months? Like, is that a normal thing, or is 2 lessons realistic, or it's
I think
out
it
of the mind?
depends. You can't blanket that
No.
for sure. But I think there is a lot of psychology in that and your own mind-body relationship. And I think, it's cool now how much is coming out about self-awareness and self-care, right? That we need to maybe take care of ourselves to the level that we take care of our horses.
Yeah.
I now go to my body worker every month, and it has also been hugely positively impactful in my body. I don't just pay for her to work on my horse.
Good job.
But it is, I think, I have a lot of ways in, the teaching that I have learned from Mary Wanless, and also having changed my body so much. I mean, like, literally, I will tell you, it took years for my hollow to go away. That was, I mean, it was so hard, but I focus on it all the time, everywhere. Like, I'd be walking around the grocery store with my thumbs on the shopping cart handle and my pelvis in neutral and my pubic bone forward, like I'm filling in my back, and I'm walking down the grocery aisle and nobody knows what I'm doing.
Yes.
But I was working on changing my posture and my body for my riding while I was at the grocery store. I spend a lot of time in the car. I am very aware of how I sit when I drive. You will never think about that more than when Mary Wanless is the passenger of your car. The biomechanics queen herself sitting in the car next to you. You're like, oh my gosh, am I square? Am I holding my shoulders level? Am I breathing okay? But it depends, I think, on the challenge in the rider's body, and also like the commitment of the body to hold on to the pattern. So you see that in horses too, that there are some horses who are like, oh, you asked me to move my body differently? Great. And there are some horses who are like, no, that is not my contract with you. And my contract with you is I'm going to hang on this rein, and too bad. And you have to slowly but surely show them that another way is possible. I think there are people out there who are very committed to, this is what I do, and this is my problem. And you're like, well, we can't. And I mean, I really can empathize with that, because I think I've lived that, but we can really be able to like think into something different. And so a lot of times with people, I say, okay, so if you think your problem is the right side, and you think your right side is this and your right side does that, I'm going to talk to you about your left side. And what could your left side do to help relieve this problem? I have one client I teach in Tennessee, and I remember the first time I went to clinic at her farm, and she was like, oh, it's my right side, it's my right side, it's my right side. And she's going around on a circle to the right, and I was like, so what's happening in your left seat bone right now? What's your left side doing? Where's your left armpit? What's your left hand doing? And she was like, because her brain was not noticing. Like I joke, now that I said the word noticing, I joke that I am a professional noticer, but it's not a joke. Like, that's really my job. I'm a professional noticer, and I strive to teach people to become their own best noticer, because you can't make a change until you notice what's happening. And for people who maybe have a history of, significant trauma or injury in their life, like, that's a scary thing in itself, to go into the body and be like, hey, I see pain, and I see trauma, and I see that is there, and I'm going to move through that to the other side, or I'm going to, work around it to support my own body in a way that we could sort of lead it down a new path, rather than continuing down the path of pain and tension and frustration. And it's the same for the horses too, right? Like, we don't want the horse to be continually going down the path of pain and trauma and frustration. And sometimes we have to look at things like, maybe you need to do some, I would be happy to come to Alabama's too. Sometimes we have to address in a clinic, like, maybe part of the issue here is saddle fit. Maybe part of the issue here is, have you had your horse scoped for ulcers? Maybe part of the issue is your horse's shoeing is not helping. Your toes are too long, his heels are too low, all those things. So it's not just the rider, of course. Like, I really spend so much of my eye focused on that, but you have to take into effect, it's like, sometimes it's like, did you realize how tight your brow band is?
No.
Or how low the bit is, that it's actually hitting your horse's canines and there are no extra holes. And maybe that's why he's not steady in the contact, is because his bit's going in his teeth all the time, right?
That could be a problem. That could be a problem. But as a clinician coming in, I think you give new eyes, because we're, we get so used to the same thing, and the tack starts to wear out, and you just like new eyes, like,
yes.
Oh, boom, 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 and a new perspective and a new background, whereas maybe you're working with the same instructor, which is, there's no problem in that with the consistency, but I do think having new eyes on you is healthy and growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny too, because, I come into a lot of my clinics are for other professionals, right? I come in, I teach you, and I teach all of your clients, and maybe a few people who hauled in or whatever it is. And then they're like, I tell her that every lesson. Why does she not do it when I tell her? But it's maybe the same words from a different person. I always joke when I had clients who would ride with Mary Wanless, I'm like, they had to pay 3 times as much money for a little scary British lady to say the same words, the same words that I say, but they heard it from her mouth in her little British accent, and it meant more to them because they paid more for it. I don't know. But it's true.
I think that's a great topic too, because I did the same in my barn. I had the same students, and I found I was struggling as an instructor, right? Because I come with my same perspective, and it was so wonderful to collaborate with the clinicians, depending on the clinicians. Some people collaborated better than others. And sometimes it was great for me to just shut up and watch someone else work with my student. And then I'm watching and I'm like, but I think it is important because we get comfortable. I think the answer is they get comfortable and we get comfortable. And so, yeah, you are paying more and you sit a little taller, and now, there's 12 people watching.
Yes.
I'm going to try out just a little bit harder. And then, like, thank God. I thank clinicians. I'm like, thank you for coming in and making my job easier.
Yes.
Or maybe I missed something. I mean, honestly,
yeah, absolutely.
I can, so let's, because we diverged, right? So you went from having a facility and regular people, and now how did you become a clinician? Like, how did that transform?
So it's all been primarily word of mouth, which is amazing. But Lauren Spreiser and I know a lot of people know Lauren from her blogs and stuff. We grew up at the same barn, and that's where I was doing all this teaching primarily for 18 years. And she came to ride one of her horses at Festival of Champions at Lamplight a couple of years ago. And it was like a miracle of miracles that I was available at the time that she was showing, that I actually got to go and watch her ride. And so I watched her warm up, I watched her ride. And, of course, she wished some things had gone a different way. And so on the way back, we're like, walking back the long walk back to the barns. And she was like, all right, biomechanics girl, tell me what you saw. And so I said a few things, and she was like, yep, I've heard that before. And I was like, can I put my hands on you? Are you comfortable with me putting my hands on your body? Safe sport moment. And she was like, do it. Right. I mean, I literally, I taught her on her first horse when she was 12 and I was 18, of all the craziness. And so I put my hands on her and I moved her body into the position where I would want it to be to help change what she was having trouble with. And she was like, okay, I'll get back to you. You're going to come to Virginia. Cool. And so that was one of the first out-of-state clinics I did. And then, someone else, she knew I went to another clinic in Indiana who was like, hey, so I heard this, you want to come, da, da, da. And And then JJ Tate came to teach a clinic at one of my clients' barns, and I rode with her. And I'm quite good at telling people the words I need to hear. So like if you're telling me, she was telling me, oh, watch your right elbow, keep your right elbow in. And I said, I know this is going to sound funny, but could you tell me to close my armpit instead? And she was like, tell me more. Because I had broken my right collarbone, and so my right shoulder would tend to slide forward, and that's part of the pattern of why my elbow sticks out. So you tell me elbow in, first of all, I get mad because I know my elbow's behaving badly. But second of all, I just like smush my arm against my side, and it doesn't actually fix the problem, which is the rotation of my shoulder joint. So a lot of the hands and arms and feet and leg problems actually are fixed higher up in the body. So she and I talked a lot about what was going on in my riding through that clinic. And then I drove her to the airport, and we talked the whole way to the airport. And she was like, huh, maybe you should come to Florida. And so I was going down actually to teach at Lauren's, and added a couple of days on at JJ's. And then since then, through podcasts with her and just getting a little more exposure, it's been really such a blessing to just catch more things. And now I have a program coming out in 2 weeks, I think, with Ride IQ. So, and that was a connection that I made with Lauren, who's one of the coaches on that app. So people will be able to, learn some of these basic biomechanics principles, even if they don't have access to me in person. So you can put your earbuds in and go for a ride and have a lesson with me that way, which is really exciting, the way that, the technology has helped us reach more riders, whether it's through chats like this or through virtual lessons or being able to post educational content online like you guys are doing. It's so great to feel like the reach is getting wider, but the community is getting tighter, right? That like people are starting to want to change, which like clearly we need some change.
We need
right?
change.
But the fact that like people are willing and excited to kind of step out of the box and try something new. And I mean, I'm just really encouraged about that. And then, you never know how like social media works. Like, how did I show up in somebody's feed that they know somebody who I know somebody who I don't even know that person who knows you, but they know? It's like all the mutual friends and or the hashtags or whatever. And then, somebody reaches out and says, can you come for a clinic? And then, now I go there 3 or 4 times a year. So it's pretty fun.
That is awesome. And so can you tell us the difference between, or what you prefer, what you don't, or the pros and cons of being at home versus a clinician? Are there things that you miss being at home versus a clinician? Do you have any comparisons there?
I mean, I really love what I'm doing right now because I think I'm reaching so many more people. And it is just sort of planting those seeds of, you can change what you're doing and change your horse. And, we all know we've all had those feelings of feeling like stuck in a rut and you keep saying the same words and there's no words to say it differently. Well, I have a big word bank, and I tell people in clinics all the time, it's like, if something I'm saying isn't resonating with you, tell me. I will change my teaching to suit you. And that's really kudos to Mary Wanless and the way she teaches us in teacher training, like, how to really like develop a rapport with a rider and teach to their understanding, whether that's their understanding of how their body works or how their horse works. Like this past weekend, I had a rider whose horse was, working 3rd, 4th level in a double bridle, and a horse who's shown I1, and a lady who's doing walk, trot, working equitation, and everything in between. And everybody made progress. So it's really, I love that so much. The part of the reason why I kind of had to step away from the regular lesson life was that every time I left, people missed out. So if I was going to be gone for a couple of days, then those lesson people didn't ride.
Oh.
And they didn't, sometimes I would get a sub, but then they didn't necessarily want to ride with the sub. So then they wouldn't ride. And then that also cost the farm money. So if I wasn't teaching, then the barn wasn't getting their cut of the lesson money. And so that became something that kind of weighed heavy on me. And I really felt like I wanted to, it was really like a leap of faith. Like I wanted to open the door to be able to do more traveling. And now, there are times when I have, like right now, it's like, if you want a clinic, my next opening is June.
Awesome.
And somebody was like, how about October? I was like, actually, October's full, so I can do November or September. So it is really, it's just so much fun. I'm so lucky and I'm so blessed to be able to do this. And I think, we have a lot of fun. And it, it's like a playful experiment kind of thing. Like what's going wrong now? Well, let's acknowledge that, and let's see how we could think differently about it, or move differently, or even like sometimes I'm like, oh, you think your problem is bending? We're not even going to talk about bending today. We're going to not even talk about what's happening in your horse. And then 20 minutes later, we're like, oh, by the way, nice bend left,
That is awesome. That is awesome. You're changing lives.
Yeah, it really, I mean, yesterday, the last rider, I mean, we were actually both in tears at the end of the ride, because it really was something that magical, that she'd had gone through a rough patch with her horse and trust, and between the two of them. And it was like, I'm going to get a little emotional right now just talking about it. It was really, it was really amazing to be able to facilitate something like that between someone who was really, she told me she was ready to give up. She was absolutely ready to just give up. And to walk and trot and feel like there is hope for it. It's almost like marriage counseling, right? Like there's hope for that horse and rider relationship, right? And that was, it's really profound when that happens.
It's a beautiful thing. It is. Yeah. It's so special when you're able to improve someone's life, and especially our horses' lives, as they give us so much. I totally feel you and everything you just said.
Yeah.
Oop, there it is. I have a question. So let's talk about what is the structures of your clinics? Like, do you have riders come in unmounted? Do you meet with all the riders unmounted? Do they just come in and ride? Or like, tell us about your clinics. How
I typically do have them come in mounted, as they normally would. And sometimes I will have a rider come in on the second day. I'll say, tomorrow, let's do this and this before you get on. Or sometimes at the end of a ride, I'll say, okay, I want you to get off, and I'm going to have you feel this before you go home today, so that you can apply it. I often do like lectures at lunch or something. That's not an always thing. I don't require that we do that, depending on the scheduling. I do a lot of breathing work with people. So that's where like my singing background, my music background really matters. Because I think that is one of the things that probably every rider in every clinic, I talk about breathing, and the way that they're breathing, where they're breathing, how they can change their breathing, how their breathing can impact the horse. It's huge, because it has a lot to do with your nervous system, and it has a lot to do with the horse's nervous system. So if your horse is not breathing, and they're in sort of that, sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight mode, like no one is learning, whether it's the rider who's holding their breath or the horse or both. And so typically I do 2-day clinics. And so I'm also very intentional about having people say things back to me in their own words, because that makes me a more effective coach. So I can keep telling you these things. And then if I'm saying these words and I say, so what says it best for you? And you say it in a little bit different way, I'm going to use your words, because your words are what's going to stick in your head and make your connection into your body. So that I think is really important. And then at the end of the ride, I always do a recap. What did you feel? What did you notice? And people are like, oh, it was just a change in my position. And I'm like, you need to use more specific words. So the language that I use is very sensory specific. We have to put words on the feelings. That's how you teach feel, right? Like you have to be able to, more forward, more bend does not answer the question, right? I have paid a lot of money myself to ride with clinicians who say more forward, more bend. I'm like, yeah, I know. Could you maybe help me with that in a different way than just going around on a 20-meter circle kicking for 20 more minutes? Like, it's so frustrating. And so that for me really is a huge piece of it, is like helping the rider make those connections. I encourage people to like do a voice memo into their phone, or if they've got someone they're videoing, we make sure that they keep the video running for that little bit of debrief at the end of the ride so that they can go back and listen to it, and connect to that. And then on the second day, when the riders come in, I always ask them what sticks in their head most from the day before. What did you wake up feeling different in your body this morning? What did you wake up dreaming about in the middle of the night? You know, like,
Yeah.
because those are the things that sort of stuck. And if we can take what sticks and really make it something that becomes more of their regular rhythm and like focus, then we can start to add layers to that. And sometimes it's like, then we can start to dig deeper and, you know, go deeper into that horse and rider, what we call the interface, right? Of like, okay, if I can really be aware of what my two seat bones are doing, that's going to impact everything from a canter depart to your half pass zigzag, you know, like all the levels. You have to have this awareness in your body. Otherwise you're just sort of up there sloshing around, kicking and pulling.
Yep. Yep. So true. So true. And we actually haven't touched on Mary Wanless and how your relationship developed, and it's been 13 years, and you
Yeah.
also became certified in her training. So how can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the way I got connected with her in the first place was through another clinician who somebody in the area had reached out to the barn I was at and said, hey, I'd like to get this person in the area, and I'm wondering if you'd be interested in hosting. And I was kind of like, who's she? I don't know. And she said, well, she's done some training with Mary Wanless. And I had audited a clinic with Mary way back when I was actually working in the therapeutic riding field. I drove to Indiana and like all by myself and just stayed overnight and audited this clinic. And I was like, wow, this is really impactful stuff. And I had been exposed to like her first book through my first dressage instructor back when I was a teenager. So I kind of knew some of the language and the ideas, but I hadn't really applied it. But knowing that this particular clinician was like somebody who'd worked with her, I was like, yeah, let's see if we can pull this off. And so she came and we had a good clinic. And then I think she came another time or two. And then she called me once and I was kind of like, she said, so Mary's supposed to come to my farm. She was in, I think, New Jersey at the time. And I kind of expected her to be like inviting me to come and ride. I thought she was going to say, hey, I have an open spot. Do you think you want to fly out here? I have a horse you could ride. She said, I can't fill the clinic. Could you take it?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? Like it was, I had, I think 3 weeks notice to fill a 3-day clinic.
Yeah, right.
Middle of the week. It was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Middle of the week.
And I was like, I don't care how much money this cost me out of pocket. It's happening. And I got 8 riders and definitely lost some money on the deal. But it really obviously changed the course of my life. So, you know, we were a very like low key level of, I didn't have a horse. I rode a school horse that was, you know, a very typical school horse that basically did training level and maybe a little leg yield. I might not have even cantered my first clinic with Mary, but it was like so much working on my posture. And she was like, well, that was great. You know, thanks for having me. You know, it was nice to work with you. You'd be welcome to come to teacher training if you're interested in that. I probably don't have room to add you on again. It was nice that you were able to take this on. And I was like, okay, you know, great. I felt a little bit like I wasn't ready to commit to teacher training. And financially, I don't think I was able to at that time either. And then 6 months later, she emails me and she was like, so I have another opening. Do you think you can throw another clinic together? And I was like, it's happening. And
Cool.
so it happened, and, got a couple other riders to haul in. And then the following year, I think I went to teacher training for the first time, and her teacher training program is really, so unique. And the way it is focused on, really, it's teaching us how to teach. And it's so focused on the rider. And I mean, it's not that we don't consider the horse, right? And we work in teams in the afternoons to, like, one person, we have the same horse, but one person's riding, one person's coaching, the third person is an observer or an assistant. And then we take turns and we rotate. So we're riding the same horses and seeing how different people impact the horse and how the horse impacts the people differently. It is so awesome. There's classroom time. There's a lot of just sharing what's working for, the colleagues and stuff. And then to get certified, we have to send in 2 video lessons that we have taught, and then write up 3 case studies. So Mary has multiple levels of certification, and I'm currently trying to get good videos. That's the hard thing, that you're like, oh, that was a good lesson video, but the sound is horrendous and I can't send that to Mary. Or you're like, oh, that was a good lesson video, and then the phone rang and, like, the lesson got cut off because I forgot to put it on airplane mode. So, like, all those dumb little things. I have case studies ready to go. I just need to get some video lessons. So I don't know, maybe I need to come to Wisconsin and use you as a
Yes.
guinea pig, Megan.
Honestly, you've, like, rejuvenated me. I'm like,
Yeah.
Your positivity. I'm a little burnt out. I'm not afraid to admit that. And yeah, when would you like to come?
We will chat calendars shortly for sure. That would be so fun.
Yeah, I would love to have you.
Because I think they're really Mary's in her 70s, she's probably going to renew her visa one more time, which is 3 more years. And then, probably really start to cut back on her travel. And so I'm really committed to keeping this work alive and reaching more people. And some of my colleagues are feeling the same way. So we're definitely working to do that. And I'm actually, this is you heard it here first moment. I'm going to be doing a instructor training myself. We're calling it a coaches conference.
Ooh.
It's going to be hosted at a client's farm in Michigan, in the Grand Rapids area, in October, because I teach quite a lot in Michigan. And so there's a lot of professionals out there. So it's not going to be the same format as Mary. It's going to be more like we'll be doing some lecture and classroom time, and then each of the participating professionals will get a lesson, but you'll also be sort of guinea pig, that we're going to talk about you in a very supportive way of, like, here are your challenges. Show me if you were going to do something wrong in your riding, do it as bad as you can, so that we can really start to educate each other's eyes, but also build that network of support. And, it doesn't matter who you are, you can learn something new every day. And I feel like I learn something new every clinic I teach from people, whether it's how they receive something I said or something that they said that I never thought of it that way before. It's just so much fun to do that. I think a lot of us, like, we don't have that, the American riding world sort of doesn't have that much structure to it. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I'm not trying to, like, take credit for anybody's work, but really just being able to share this with more people in a way that then can help. There's so many, I think, coaches out there who are really, really good riders and have a hard time putting into words what they do. I didn't get to ride very much. I went 20 years. I have my own horse again. Hallelujah. I love him. But I didn't have my own horse for 20 years. Through the vast majority of my teaching career, I just got on people's horses occasionally. Like, I didn't have full training clients. Most of my people, were 1 or 2 lesson a weekers, and a lot of people on lesson horses. So that's been my focus. So for me to be able to help those trainers who ride and ride and ride and ride and want to support their clientele better, that's what I'm doing that conference for. So, we'll see how it goes and hopefully be able to do more of them.
Yeah, and anytime you're welcome to come to Wisconsin, and I'll be a guinea pig. And
Awesome.
I'll see if I can wrangle some people, but if not, I'm still open to it.
Yeah, great.
We need collaboration and education, and I think joy. I think
Yes.
bottom line, it's bringing joy and to the professionals, because we can't, if we're not joyful, we're not spreading the joy to our students. And for me, I'm finding my joy again.
Yeah.
So, and Barn Besties is huge on that. And yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Thanks.
I got a question on
Yeah.
that. So Megan is obviously a professional who's very open to you coming in and doing what you do, but how often do you come across professionals who are intimidated and just kind of shut you down, like, oh no, like you might come in and show my personal issues to my students and get what's the word I'm looking for, Megan? Get intimidated or
Self-conscious, maybe.
self-conscious? Yes, all that. Like,
Sometimes,
is it hard?
I mean, yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I think that's a bigger deal locally. That like people at local barns wouldn't necessarily want me to come there because there's that threat. Like, I am not taking your clients, people. I don't have time for that. And so I do have a couple of places where I go, that are, within an hour or so of me, where I do come in, and I'm come in once a month, and that particular trainer has referred me to other barns where she goes once a month. So then, we're kind of also still working together in the wider network of other stables. I have gone to some places. I went to one farm where the owner of the farm rode and a lot of the boarders rode, and one of the trainers encouraged all her students to ride and then did not even come at all.
No.
And that was, I mean, her riders were very disappointed. And they felt like the clinic was very meaningful, but then they couldn't really, they didn't feel like they could keep up with that. And then the second time around, that particular trainer did ride with me that time and then followed up with me on a virtual lesson. So it was like, okay, see what you missed. And, that was cool. But it's been interesting, like going to Wellington. I mean, sometimes I feel like when I teach in Wellington, it's like people are going to think I'm crazy. But then, people are like, oh, who's she? What's she doing? And then they see who I'm teaching and who I'm working with. And they're like, oh, well, if she's good enough for them, then maybe I want to talk to her. So, this is who I am. And this is, I just want to help people, and I don't care. I've never shown Grand Prix. I'm open with that. Like, I have not had a career where I've been able to, have horses to earn my medals on. So, but yet I can still be valuable and relevant to people at that level. So, I think it sometimes is a hurdle to get past, but usually once they see what magic I can do with people, then they sign up for the next time.
I think that.
But it's been hard, I think, at the beginning, because I knew one person particularly who was like, well, she's never shown over third level. Why would I ride with her? I'm like, okay, fine. If that's your opinion and that you would value me more if I had more show experience, then, I'll teach somebody else. No big deal. I got plenty of people to teach. So.
Yeah, I think everyone has something to offer. And I think that's a very narrow thought process. But I did want to go back to talking about instructors, right? Like, I'm a perfectionist. And so for me, it is hard to ride in front of people. It doesn't matter who it is. I always want to be my best. And guess what? Some days we're just not. And that's something I'm working through. But I'm not, for me, I want to be forever a student, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm always going to be working on myself. But I also have an ego. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat that and like go, ooh, I do want to be perfect. That's my A-type personality. And so, but I want to be better than I want to be perceived in my mind the best. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I
Yes.
know I have things to work on. So for me, I'm like, yeah, get your butt to Wisconsin. Let's get working. And
Absolutely.
you know, and I think that's just a balance for us professionals, right? And where
Yeah.
our confidence level is, and who where are we developing? You know, do you want to develop? And I think that's the question as a professional. If they're sensitive, they're just on their own development path, you know.
Mhm.
And never cut yourself short, Suzanne.
Yeah.
You got a lot to offer, baby.
Oh, thanks.
So much to offer. So don't ever think that, and also know that you're so busy. Focus on the
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
want your joy, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing.
Always.
So thank you. Have we touched on everything? I just love hearing about your life, and I think it's so cool that we connected on Facebook and that you love Barn Besties, because I really didn't know who you were, and Steph's like, who is this lady? And I go, I don't know, but we're gonna find out. I think
Yeah.
she's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
I had forgotten that we had met, but that was,
But it was
I tell you
that was
what,
like another lifetime ago, it feels like.
not only that, but I was very stressed all those weekends.
Yeah.
Like I was focused on, it was such, you remember, horses were coming off the trailer lame.
Excuses.
You know,
excuses.
Yes,
I mean,
one of
it was,
those I had to lunge and I was like, I'm not sure about this one.
yeah, I mean, it was like, it was honestly like, you know, a lot of sleeplessness because
Yeah.
it was, and as you said, we had EHV1 and
Mhm.
I mean, I remember how many countless times rescheduling workshops.
Yes.
Oh,
And
I mean,
thank
it
you so
was,
much. I mean, I appreciate anybody who puts on clinics, because like this clinic I did this past weekend, it was put on by a pony club out in Scottsdale, Arizona. And, you know, they had somebody who volunteered to pick me up from the airport because the clinic was like an hour away. And then, you know, somebody else volunteered to do, provide us with lunches on the 2 days of the clinic, because there was not really anywhere close to just go grab something or cater something. And then somebody else drove me back to the airport on Sunday. So it really does take a village, and there's so many of those details that, so, you know, for those of you out there listening who participate in clinics, like give your clinic organizer a high five or a bottle of wine or whatever their love language might be, a box of chocolates, because it really, I mean, I appreciate everybody who does that for me so much, because it's hard to schedule, and then you've got people who want to drop out at the last minute, and you hate to make them pay, but right. But like, you have to, I mean, I had that a couple weekends ago in Denver, because all of a sudden, you know, overnight there was 8 inches of snow and it was not safe to haul. So, so we had to cut. A couple of people kind of dropped off, but then the second day, one of them was able to haul because it was so close. So there's always those things that go wrong. And, you know, it's sort of, you just have to kind of handle it with grace and keep doing what you're doing.
Yep. I think so.
and volunteer for those clinics. Help
Yeah.
help the organizer.
Right.
I swear, I don't think I could have done those instructor workshops without a huge amount of volunteers.
Right. Because something even as simple as like, can someone go to Costco and get the bottled water for everybody? You know, I mean, that's a trip that could save a half an hour or an hour of your week if somebody else can just do that. Or you can be the person who picks up lunch that day. You know, it doesn't have to be an 8-hour a day commitment, but you know, it's just like volunteering at the horse show. Like, if you can give an hour or two of your time when you know you don't have those classes on your schedule, you know, it's always appreciated, and I think underrated, right? We really need to support each other in that way, and because it can't, otherwise you see all these big horse show venues that are like, now they're not going to do their shows because they can't afford to put them on. So if we don't step up and offer our time and our talents and our treasures, then you know, we're not gonna have these opportunities for our horses or our riders.
Full agreement. All right.
Totally. This has been amazing.
Ladies, this has been awesome. I think
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Yes, your food's probably cold.
Water bottle.
No, that's okay.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I look forward to the future, and I hope this live was helpful to the world, you know, and we get the word out.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
fun.
thank you
Thanks for
so
having
much.
me. It's been so much fun. I mean, clearly I'm a little bit passionate about what I do and I love to talk about it. So.
It's wonderful. We've had quite a group of people watching tonight. So I've got your website on the screen.
Great.
They can contact you through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that usually
You've
has
got your
my
calendar.
yeah, it's got my calendar. I have to probably put more dates on there because more dates have booked. So
Yay!
yeah.
Yay!
Do you want to talk about any other social medias where they can find you?
Yeah, Positively Dressage on Instagram and on Facebook. I post as much as I have time for on there, but you can always reach out to me on Messenger, Instagram as well, or there is, I think, some kind of link on the website. I get emails through the website somehow in the land of GoDaddy. So.
Well, thank you so much
Perfect.
for sharing your story.
Well, thank you guys too for doing what you're doing, because I'm excited to see your videos about California and all that too. So we get to live vicariously through your travels too.
Thank you for watching. And we're going to
Yes.
keep growing this channel, and we're going to keep collaborating, and we're going to change our industry the best we can. I mean, that's
absolutely
one video at a time.
We're
there
gonna
you
be
go.
the change.
Amen.
Let's do
Maybe
it.
we can have you back again for round 2 of this. This has been great. I really appreciate
anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So much fun.
We'll have to do. I'll have to come up and give you some lessons, and then we'll have a recap, right?
Yes.
That would be really fun.
Megan. Look at Megan.
She's like, "Do-do-do."
I'm messaging you tonight. Get ready. Lily.
All right. Sounds good.
Better open up some more dates on the calendar.
Yes. You're close enough. I can drive. It's not a big deal.
Ooh.
Yeah. So where are you? You're Northern Illinois, right?
Yeah, I live about a half an hour, 35 minutes, like southeast of Lamplight. So
okay, perfect.
Very accessible to tollways and airports.
Oh, I know what I wanted before you take off. You mentioned that tow website where you got the
yes.
thing. What is that again? I need
Correct
that. In my life.
Tows. It's www.correcttows.com. And also for anybody else with like foot and ankle issues, there's a PT group that does a lot of great videos. They're not horse related, but I may, in my, delving into continuing education, actually do their human gait analysis course eventually, because I think that would be so cool to know more in that. And they're called Gait Happens, G-A-I-T, Gait Happens, just like a horse's gaits. But they have great little videos on their Instagram and Facebook. So if like, oh when I run, like my one foot does this or my one ankle does that, you can probably find on their socials a simple little exercise that if you do it a couple times a day, like it'll really make an impact in your foot and ankle, which then of course makes an impact in your riding and your back and your knees and your hips and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Looks like we have a fan who's going to be seeing you in March.
All right, Rhonda, I hope I'll see you.
Yeah, that's exciting. So, got another thank you from Sue. Thank you, Sue, for all your questions for Suzanne. We appreciate that. But I mean, we don't need to keep you. Your dinner is probably cold.
It's okay. They might actually not even be home yet. They went to go get stuff, so I think they're not even back yet. So it's fine. I was like, I can't cook tonight, guys. Somebody's got to go pick up dinner.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate it again so much. We've got your website also in the description on this so that people can find you afterwards as well. So
Great.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a great night. And
you
Megan,
too. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
Megan will stay on and find out how you're doing. Quick update. How are you okay in California? I think the fire discussions on the news have died down. So
they are. I think they're out. I don't want to say it officially.
Something down by San Diego, maybe.
No, I think they're out.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think we're good. I am focusing on Barn Besties. I had an amazing tour yesterday at
oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Shannon and Stephen Peters' let's see if I can pronounce it. I apologize. Aurora del Mar in San Diego. So that was really awesome to be able to go and tour an international riding facility. And Shannon, I don't know how she does it, honestly. People say I do a lot. She has 60 plus horses. She manages the farm. There are 7 trainers, including her and Stefan. And
Wow.
if anyone who doesn't know who's listening, because maybe there are people who don't, Stefan and Shannon ride internationally. Stefan has been on our Olympic team. 5 times, 6 times. I apologize if I have gotten it wrong. Shannon has competed internationally. Um, they're, she goes around the country giving clinics. I personally don't know how she does it, and she still competes. So I was grateful for the time she gave me. She was extremely busy, and to fit me in, and so we could share with Barn Besties. I feel very privileged. I wish you had been there, Steph, because I was actually kind of nervous.
I would have loved. I probably would have driven her crazy with all the questions.
Yeah, you
But
would have.
what an experience.
Yep. So that was really exciting, and I'm looking forward because you need to do your magic on the videos. They are in the little black box. So Stephanie will do her magic, and they will come out later this year, and that'll be exciting. So please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss them. I am working on more dates. Monty Roberts has said yes, Barn Besties can come and tour his facility. So I'm working hard on trying
You
to.
got to the Reagan Ranch, right?
Well, I
Sort of.
haven't gotten in yet.
Okay.
So I have done a few shorts, but I was on the side of the road.
It's okay.
It's for sale. So that
Aw.
way you guys, so those will be coming up, I think this month in the shorts. So definitely subscribe and make sure you get to see the Ronald Reagan Ranch. But like I said, it's for sale. I've contacted the realtor, and I'm hoping to get a little tour so we could see what that's like. So hopefully that'll happen soon. But yeah, it's hard to set and organize up. I did get to see an amazing Frisian barn. So that was really cool. It was actually my dream barn. So having a lot of fun breaking out Barn Besties in California.
Well, we're just glad to know that the fire danger has died back,
Yeah.
and that you guys are safe and not panicked and halfway out the door, ready to
No, we're
run.
not. I mean, we're still packed. We're still ready to evacuate at any time, but the power hasn't gone out for 2 weeks, so that's awesome.
Are the winds, the Santa Anas, calmed down now? For now?
For now, yeah. The winds have died down for about 2 weeks, at least where we are.
You got rain.
We got rain, and we're supposed to get rain this week, which
Good.
normally I hate rain, but I have a new perspective on rain.
Yeah, a new appreciation.
Yeah, and what have you been up to in Wisconsin? Because you've been a little busy beaver too.
Work, invading your barn.
Yeah.
Doing some interviewing for Barn Besties. Learning all the things about your staff, which has been really awesome.
Yeah, I think it's been good.
Yeah.
I know we were going to sit down and talk to them together, but I think it's probably better that I'm not there.
Oh, they're still not going to open up about you, Megan. Even though I wink, wink, nod, nod, they're still like,
No.
Good ladies.
Really?
Good ladies. Yep, really great ladies. You got good staff there.
Yes.
So loved the shorts from roving reporter Lisa. That was great.
That was amazing. Those were hilarious.
I got to see that wall in person.
Yeah, Mr.
It's
Cameraman.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Your new ribbon, your newly rearranged and cleaned off ribbon wall is stunning. It's better in person than on video.
Awesome. I can't wait to see it in April.
Yeah. You guys got to keep earning the ribbons. Add to it.
Yeah,
a little here, a little there.
Run out of space, but yeah.
To rearrange more walls.
It's a lot of upkeep.
I pointed out while I was there that you have several other walls that could be stripped clean and rearranged and redecorated.
All right. Well, we'll see what show season brings. Anyone have any horses you want me to show?
There you go. Megan loves showing.
I do. I love showing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Are you going to show it all in California?
Nope, not this year.
I would be a little concerned about even thinking about entering a show with all the fire situation. Yeah. Getting committed to that and then having the winds come and the fires start up again. That's oh gosh.
I know.
Megan.
Yes. You know what? I found more latches at Aurora Del Mar. So
Of course you did. Hardware and latches.
Yes, you're learning new things about how weird I am.
It's good. It's all good.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll get more barn tours that I can find more latches. That's my goal in life.
Did you see I created a playlist?
Yes, I did. And if I knew how to create playlists, I would make
You can't do it on the mobile app.
I can't.
You have to be on the computer. Yeah.
Maybe in a year I'll be able to do it.
It's easier on the computer. For some reason, their mobile app won't let you do it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we have a Megan and her hardware obsession playlist.
Oh, yeah. I will continue to find you more latches, Sue, because I have not found all of them.
And hardware.
And hardware. I'm on
clips and all the, yeah. I love the gate latches. I do. I actually agree with you. They're interesting.
Aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Some of that stuff, it's like, oh, I've not seen that around here. And some of it's like, oh, I've seen a cousin of that, like that one latch.
It looks just like yours.
But different.
It
just like mine, but different.
It was called an easy latch. I don't think yours.
Well, I thought it was even safer than the latches that I had.
Although I got to admit, it took me a little bit to.
Well, I have to say, it was easy because when you videotaped it, it made it very obvious.
Yeah.
So we didn't have all the figuring it out because you just presented it perfectly to us, and it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and so it's going well in California. I will continue to find new and odd things, and all the things.
Can you you'll have to ask permission, but it would be really cool, in my opinion, to see the feed store situation, go into the feeder, go into one of the tack stores, because their feed store situation is, I feel like it's totally different than like us. We don't get our hay delivered through the feed store.
I'm working on that. I also went down to Mary's Tack and Feed, and I chatted to the cashier. So I do have some paperwork I need to do and call them, but they actually seemed open into me coming back and videoing. So
awesome.
Yeah, and so Mary's Tack and Feed is really cool. I did just put up some shorts on our Facebook page. Like, it is, I kept my purse in the car because it's like 2 floors. I mean, it's everything. Like, you got to check it out. Like, it's a whole, I've never seen so many halters in my life. It was amazing. So anyway, I'm excited to go back, but one half is, well, actually, it's a whole building of everything, tack, equipment, blankets, and then outside is feed. So we'll show you that. And then I just thought of, there's Roundup feed at the bottom of the hill that brings feed to the 2 farms I'm at, but I have yet to get video footage of them coming because I never know when they're coming. I did get the dumpsters, but I haven't gotten the feed on video. There's a couple more, amazingly enough, I cannot wait to see how many videos are on that little black box when I come home. I think we should have like a a contest. Like, how many videos are
You'll
going to
beat
be
me.
on that little? Well, yeah, it's not a contest between you and I. I think we should like have a shirt, because I know how you like merch, that we give to someone who comes up with the number, right? Like, I don't even know how many videos I'm gonna come up with, right? But like they guess, like, oh, it's gonna be 250. Oh, it's gonna be 300. Oh, Megan's gonna make 500 videos.
Whoa.
And then when I come home,
Do the shorts count?
yes, the shorts count. YouTube.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
2,000 videos.
Wow. Well, anyway, I think we should make a contest. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Merch. You know, I'm all about the merch. You
I
gonna
know.
finally sign off on some merch?
Yeah, you want that merch.
It's fun. It's fun. It's all about, like, I love our goofy avatar logo-y thing, and yeah.
Yep. Bye,
Absolutely.
Sue.
Bye,
Thank
Sue.
you for joining us. Well,
Thank you.
I think
Are
we good,
what?
Steph? Or
Oh, I was gonna say, I would love to see, like, I know those hay bales are huge and heavy. You got to show that in a short. Are they wire baled? Are they like the 100-pound hay bales? Are they like the monster alfalfa irrigated? Yeah. That's crazy. Make a short. Because I looked at your short that came out, was that today or yesterday, that showed the little feed area?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, that looks like a normal hay bale, but I know that's not a kicker bale.
It's not. No, it's 3 strands of twine. They call them 3-strand bales.
So it is twine, but it's not wire baled.
Well, I have been at other, like in previous years, there was wire, but this is twine. But it's they call it 3 strands, and it's basically the same. And I think it's 125 to 150.
Wow.
I cannot pick it up. The staff can, and like they get it unloaded. I mean, they drive it to the farm, and people actually unload it.
Big bunch of no for me, and my back says no. So yeah, if you can think about something like that. But no, we should go ahead and wrap this up. It's been a long one. I loved Suzanne. She was amazing. I had forgotten that I had met her. It has been over a decade. So, you know, it's funny. Now I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, I thought her name looked familiar. And now it ties together. So that was really cool. But yeah, hopefully you can get her up to your farm to do clinic. Hopefully she'll come back on Barn Besties for some sort of video. We had a live stream or whatever, but that'd be great.
Well, if we have her up, we might be able to shoot
some videos.
Yeah, we'll see if she's up for it. I think she is, but I don't want to make any promises. But why not? If she does come up, let's do it.
Yeah, well, we can always ask. So cool. But thanks everybody that came on the live. We appreciate it. This live will be available, of course, on YouTube for viewing again at any point in time. We've been on for a little over 2 hours. So Megan and I appreciate anybody that can watch through the live. We are working really hard, trying to get our watch hours up, trying to qualify what they call monetization here. YouTube plays they play ads on our videos regardless, right? Like, we have no control over that. What monetization would do is give us like a few pennies of that advertising money. I mean, YouTube obviously is providing this to us free of charge. So they deserve to get their advertising coins. The nice thing is, when we're monetized, you and I get a couple pennies out of that advertising dollars. So yeah, we're hoping to get there. That's our goal. Grow our channel and get some merch.
Let's get some merch. All right.
Get some more Megan Lanch videos. All right. Thanks everybody. We appreciate it.
Everyone.
All right. Bye everybody.